Welcome to Directionally Correct, a BLS podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Roxanne Laczo, Head of People Analytics at Cloudflare.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, watch our videos on YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. We are a listener-supported podcast, so please consider becoming a patron. If you'd like to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can find a link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for being a listener. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Well, I will attend meetings where, like, say a leader will be on and they will be on video and everyone else is off video. So there's like one person on, and it feels really weird.
It does feel incredibly weird. Everybody's got to go on or everybody's got to go off. Because if everybody goes off, it's basically a phone call, right?
Yeah.
But if some people are and some people are off, it's just like, what? What is happening?
Then it's like if someone comes on, it's like your little, teacher's pet. Like you got like a whole like social dynamic going on.
Yeah. or maybe it creates like a cascade where other people join because one person went on, on video.
Here in Seattle, no one jaywalks. Like, it's one of the weirder things about Seattle.
Oh, really?
Oh, no. People are fucking rule followers. And there's nothing better than, like, starting a jaywalking cascade. Like, everyone's lined up at the intersection. And, like, you'll go out in the intersection, like, next thing you know, you got 10 people behind you.
Do people jaywalk in Austin, Roxanne?
Just me. And so it's funny
Yes.
because I feel like, I've been to a lot of cities all over the world and you just go. And I feel like I scare people here. I was in Amsterdam with a friend of mine over the summer and I think I gave her a heart attack because I kept saying like, let's go. And she's like, oh, no.
Well, Amsterdam, like, you will fucking die. Like, that silent death of the bicycles cruising by you.
Bicycles. Try in Vietnam with like 8,000 mopeds, like a sea of fish. Your way. It's like a big game of Frogger.
Well, in downtown Austin, they put in the new railings on 6th Street. So I hear that, yes, there are cars allowed, but people can't, linger.
I don't know. Not a 6th Street person.
Oh, you're a 6th Street person. Come on now.
Once in my life, I was at a bar on 6th Street, and I hated it with, like, every passion, so never again.
You don't want, like, Jello shots and stuff? Come on.
Oddly enough, I'm known for making 3 specialty drinks, and one of them is Jello shots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, what kind of person are you, Roxanne, if you're not a 6th Street person?
I'm more of a have a nice dinner, be in bed by 9:00 person, get up early, seize the day.
You're a West 6th Street person.
Yeah, you're right. I'm like way west, like almost Mopac 6th Street person.
Terrytown. Keep on going.
I wish I was a Terrytown person. Oh man. If only. Because you're from Austin originally, is that right?
I grew up in Dallas, but I lived in Austin for probably 10 years total, perhaps a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's been 12 years since I lived there, but yeah, it's near and dear to my heart. I know the town very, very well. However, every time I go back, it's completely changed. Like everywhere I used to go looks totally different. It's amazing.
So now, did you go to high school here?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. He lived there before it became overrated, Roxanne.
Oh, smart move. I came right on the cusp. Now, well, maybe it's because I'm here that it's overrated. I don't know. Maybe I caused a problem. I never thought about that.
Why do you think it's overrated?
Oh, well, so even in 8 years that I've been here, it's totally changed. So it seems like a lot of the kind of uniquenesses keep Austin weird. I feel like now it's just keep Austin tech. And so on South Congress, which used to be kind of this very unique area, a lot of mom and pop shops. Now we've got an Hermes store, right? Kind of like a lot of design. There's new apartments, new hotels and stuff like that. And so like that kind of old school flair and vibe is really gone. And even Allen's Boots, the kind of infamous cowboy boot store, it's like even that feels, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been there, but even that feels different now. So it's just the whole vibe has changed in so many ways. And I think it's great if you're coming to Austin for a bachelorette party, or maybe you're in college or something like that. But for more mature people who have had those days and done with them, that's not for me anymore. So I like in my little retirement community that I live in, very quiet.
I mean, the honky tonk on South Lamar is still there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Broken Spoke.
Yes, the Broken Spoke, very good. That's good times. However, it's completely surrounded by new build, which it
Yeah.
was just like a building the off the side for the longest time.
Yeah, yeah, unrecognizable down that way.
But this is kind of the worst time in Austin as well. Like right in the March time when like everything is blooming. My God, my allergies kicked up so bad, so
Yes,
bad.
it's allergy season, absolutely. And then we're waiting for monsoon season.
Yes.
So we can enjoy like maybe a month of really beautiful greenery, and then it's like the next biggest fire hazard waiting to happen.
Well, I strongly encourage you to take on South by Southwest. You can go be a Dirty Six girl, go to the Chuggin' Monkey.
So my second year, I went to South by and I bought the
Yeah.
all-in pass to quickly realize it's almost meaningless, because even with an all-in platinum pass, you have to go 2 hours in advance and stand in line for the session that's in the room for the session you want to go to ahead of your session. So it was like, even with the all-in pass, it's really not a very good deal. I'm glad I went, but I would never do it again. And I don't really know what the experience is like now. I don't really know anybody that goes a whole lot, and I certainly don't go down there during South by, which I think is in the next couple of weeks here. So it's coming up really quickly.
Well, South by is like you have people. It's like, well, I'm gonna go see this new band called like Underwater Jellyfish. You're like, oh yeah, okay. I don't know what that is. Okay, sure. It's just a mishmash of people I've never heard of.
It's an absolute mishmash. Yeah.
So what do you like, Roxanne? You don't like South by, you don't like Austin.
No, I never said I don't like them. I never said I don't like them. I said Austin is overrated. I love Austin, which is why I live here. I just think it's that there's a lot of things have changed so quickly in this city that it's a lot of the things you kind of grow to love. Some of that has changed. And so, like, a new restaurant pops up, forget it. You're not going. There's like everybody's got a reservation for the next 6 months out. And so we have a bunch of new Michelin star restaurants, and absolutely forget about going to any of them, because you have to get up at midnight to get on the sign up list. And so, like, it's some of those little things. And even ACL, I used to go to the ACL after shows, which are not formally affiliated, but the little cute honky tonk bars and
Yeah.
different places would have them. So I saw Thundercat, and literally, like, Thundercat is like right here in front of me the year I went. And so now, like, that would never be possible. Even those, it's really hard to get into because everything has become such a hype. I guess that's kind of my discombobulation a little bit with Austin, is like everything has become such a hype that for locals, like things we used to be able to really enjoy, it's become a lot harder.
Freaking
I sense
Thundercat.
I sense a theme here, because when we were prepping for this, Roxanne, we were talking about like there's been a bunch of hype in people analytics, and has people analytics lost this way? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Well, so that's an interesting one. And I know this is kind of my soapbox, but when I think back to the beginning of my career, I was doing survey work for Best Buy. I was on the measurement team. That was people analytics like 20 some years ago, right? So I'm dating myself a little bit. But I really feel like, as an IO psychologist, and I know I talk about this a lot, as I think, this is kind of what we're built to do, right? This is what we do, is we measure people at work. And I feel like there's, 100-year foundation of us doing that work. I feel like people analytics has really morphed, even from, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, when kind of people analytics teams started to more formally form, that there's a very, very strong over reliance and focus on the technology part of it. Although I understand that certainly enables it a lot. You can't do really good people analytics, in my opinion, without understanding the theoretical foundations of employees at work, right? And as IO psychologists, not saying that you have to have a PhD in IO psychology to understand this, but I think it really lays the foundation for being able to do really meaningful critical work and thinking about data and insights across the entire talent lifecycle instead of worrying about dashboards. Like every time someone says dashboard somewhere, like a puppy dies. That's where I'm at now. It's like there's such this over reliance on that type of activity. And every people analytics team has like a dashboard or has this or that. It's not a lot of people analytics teams. And a lot of this has to do with organizational size and organizational readiness, of course. But I feel like a lot of teams aren't really doing what I would consider the actual people analytics work, which is actually scientific, psychometrically validated analysis and investigation of what's happening in the employee life cycle.
I think that's completely apt. Like, I think it's the sexy thing to do, right? Like HR technology. But like to your point, there's very little theory spoken. I mean, our whole profession rests on psychological principles, but it's to the point where I don't even know if people think about theory at all. They think about like the new Gen AI. They think about the new dashboard. Like, can you code in Python, ambient IO? Yeah, but
Absolutely.
tell me your favorite leadership theory. Tell me your favorite motivation theory.
Right.
I imagine people struggle.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, do you have to know all that stuff to do some good work and deliver insights? No, you don't. But is it going to help you? And I think it gives you like
Yeah.
a bigger picture perspective on really how we're going to add value. So even think about like more on the talent side, right? So and Cole and I talked about this a little bit, like people analytics teams rarely, in my experience, own or operate assessments. It's typically a very separate field. It's run by separate teams. And oftentimes that data is not really integrated into the people analytics talent lifecycle. Right. And so I'm like, to me, that's a huge miss because again, I'll get on my IO psychologist soapbox is, we have a lot of very deep expertise in that, a lot of theoretical scientific expertise. There's a million crap assessments out there, as you know,
Yeah.
right? And I think we should be more heavily involved in organizations that have people analytics teams and kind of assessment or talent teams. There's probably more opportunities for integration there. Um,
I think we've also ignored the humanistic function of it too. Like
yeah,
we've gone so far into say like sentiments and this sort of stuff, which is fantastic, but they're also outcomes of the employee experience.
yeah,
We've ignored very sort of core employee experiences that allow them to come to work, to allow them to be happy, this sort of stuff. Whether like they feel like energized at the office or not, that's that's the result of all these other issues. Once again, it goes back to like the two-factor theory, Hertzberg, satisfiers and dissatisfiers.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
When I think about it, and just to resonate with what you were saying, Roxanne, is the blank stare. So you're talking to somebody in our field about like how you might measure something or how like why it might be important to solving a business problem, and there's like a does not compute function going in their head to like, yeah, but how can I thought we just did descriptive statistics, and how what you're saying I don't understand. And it's like, well, if you can't put it in a pivot table, if it can't fit in a dashboard, if it's not all storytelling with data, then they don't understand it. And I think there's just a huge opportunity there. Or maybe not an opportunity. Maybe it's just a skill that we lost. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't always like that.
Where's the experimentation, right? Like running
Yeah.
true experiments. You don't hear that very often. You do hear
Yeah.
about dashboards.
That's true. And I think the bigger companies typically have a lot more opportunity, well, a lot more money, a lot more staff to be able to
Yeah.
do experimentation. But it's really hard, I think, even to sell leaders, especially in smaller companies or in tech, because the leaders are not coming from that scientific background necessarily, like super brilliant tech minds, but not people that are going to maybe
Yeah.
be willing to experiment or understand what the value of that is. Right. So it's very different. And I just think even another step. So I teach a people analytics class at the business school here. It's really an IO psychology class in a lot of ways, but I just taught a class on reliability and validity. And I wonder if I did a poll at work informally, I guarantee most leaders would not, like, they would understand what the word means conceptually. They would not understand from a measurement and psychometric standpoint. And like, do they need to understand that? No. But if we're talking about measuring people, these are really fundamental core foundational concepts that are really important that I think most people analytics teams don't even think about.
they're fungible too, right? They apply across the board to
Yep,
anything you're doing.
absolutely.
Well, can I build on this too? Because I think there's like this misnomer out there that like doing an experiment is hard.
Yeah, yeah,
It's actually not that hard. And it's not that hard to analyze the results. It's not that hard to calculate reliability and validity. It's just, do you have the skills and the know-how to do it?
absolutely.
And do you actually value that it has some kind of efficacy in the real world? Right? I think that's really where the gap is. People just assume, oh, science is hard, experimentation is hard. It's not hard. Not hard at all.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes a little time.
A little
Yeah.
forethought, yeah.
Yeah.
But do you find, so I find I've worked in tech off and on for a long time. There's the balancing getting the work done with the speed required to getting work done
Mhm.
and priorities changing a lot. And so I feel like, so it's one of those things you kind of learn just to let go of, that some of these things that you were taught in grad school or maybe that you did in a different part of your life, you just kind of have to let them go. Thoughts and prayers that you're going in the right direction and you're going to get the results and analysis that you need.
Yeah.
It's amazing, like, I'm like a broken record, but, like, it's amazing what the first, like, 3 months of those of your grad school experience, how far those skills go. I'm talking about basic research methods, all right? Just selecting a sample. Can we have a randomized sample for a true experiment? Can we form a hypothesis that's testable?
Absolutely.
What is a hypothesis?
What? What are these
Yeah.
words?
What is
Yeah.
going on?
Well, I mean, you're teaching this, at UT Austin. What what is that like? Are students receptive to these messages?
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the students, it's a requirement, so they have to be receptive. But what I found is I'm focusing a lot less on the analytics part in terms of like, here's how you run an analysis or, look at data. And I'm focusing more on the kind of the thought analysis. So, like, here's some selection methods, here's reliability and validity and why they're important. Let's talk about examples of that and what might you think about using a specific example. And this is something I stole from one of your former guests, who's a good friend of mine and my meetup co-host, Ethan Burris. He provided me some slides that he used to use, and he uses zookeeper as an example. So I have totally gone in this zookeeper example to give the students a thought about, if you're hiring a zookeeper, what are the selection methods that you might need to do that? And we take it a step back. What's the job analysis for zookeeper? And then we go to like, what's the L&D plan? What does performance management look like, right? So I really try to kind of give them real life examples that aren't so IOE or so focused on people analytics that, these are students that some of them have had jobs, a lot of them haven't. They're not going to understand the application. So I really try to give them kind of real life scenarios around how would you apply this? And when in doubt, always use a football example, because everybody will get that and understand that. And that's when I know I have to hook them. I'll be like, what would the coach of the UT football team do? That's a really easy way to get them hooked on the conversation.
He would go all gas, no brakes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's what he
nobody's
would
said
do.
that yet, but it was really funny because we were talking about cognitive ability tests and adverse impact and all that stuff. I said, just go online and search some examples of when a company might have used a cognitive ability test and it didn't work. Half the students found the Wonderlic that the NFL used to use, and they found the example. And I don't know all the details, but CJ Stroud, who was for
Mhm.
the Texans, and who like bombed the Wonderlic, but they still hired him, and now he's done all this great stuff. I was like, you know what? That's a great example of applying the concepts we've learned to something that you know and understand, and it's completely relevant to really the workplace, right?
Well, speaking of the cognitive ability stuff, you and Ethan hosted the Austin People Analytics meetup the other day. I came down to see Paul Sackett
Yeah,
speak. What was that like? And was he your advisor
Paul was
or
my
like?
advisor. I've known Paul since 1999.
Dang.
When I walked in his office, and so this is where I get to embarrass Paul because he probably won't watch this and he's not on LinkedIn. I walked into his office because somebody told me that him and his wife were big rodeo fans. So I walked in, coming from Calgary, used to be the world's largest rodeo, the Calgary Stampede, with a tape of local rodeos, specifically chuck wagon racing. And I tell you, I
Oh,
had them hooked after that. So it's like instant friends. We've been really close. I saw him again just last week before they went back to Minneapolis. So having said that, I think thinking about grad school, like it was kind of happenstance that I ended up in Minneapolis with Paul. But from a education standpoint, the best decision I ever could have made, because the man is absolutely brilliant. And if you've ever read any of his stuff or kind of seen any other more informal talks he gives, and he might have mentioned it here, he's like, I really feel like this was my calling, and I absolutely believe that. But it's funny because he's at the point now where he's like, I keep coming up with these ideas and then realize I've already published papers on those ideas. I'm like, that's amazing.
He's already published on on his idea.
He's like, I wanted to look at, range restriction and something. Then I thought, I think I published on it. And I was like, oh, we published a paper about range restriction like in 2000, whatever. So yeah, it's all coming around now. But yeah, he's really wonderful. And I know he talked about his latest and greatest paper, which has really oddly caused a lot of controversy out in the world with Frank Schmidt's former students. If you've been tracking that or following it, there's a lot of point counterpoints. And I made the mistake of making a comment on someone's LinkedIn page, a professor who said, "Oh, great new research debunking Sackett's," and I was like, "Okay, hold on." And so I went on this whole tirade, and then he lectured me on LinkedIn that I was like not being a good scientist and this and that. So I was like, okay, win, but we're right. So.
Wait, what was that last comment, Roxanne?
You can win this argument, but we're, meaning Paul Sackett and team. I said we're actually right about this.
I love that. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, and we're actually, I think, covering an article later by one of the Frank Schmidt.
I know. I saw.
I thought that was humorous per the conversation that you and I had in Austin.
That should be your next one of your next guests.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. I do want to come back to the selection and assessment stuff. Just from a curiosity, like, I don't know if you do that in your day job at all, linking people analytics and selection and assessment, but I also know that you do it kind of on the side as well. Yep. Can you speak to this at all about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would like to do it in my regular day-to-day job. We're not quite there yet, right? And so I think in tech companies, it takes longer to get to that personality assessment place to kind of convince leaders. So that's like a whole other Directionally Correct podcast. But prior to my job at Cloudflare, I worked at Hogan and I was a consultant, and I did primarily assessments for selection for my clients. I did some development stuff, but it was really interpreting and debriefing Hogan assessments, sometimes in combination with cognitive ability assessments, to basically deliver selection recommendations. And I'm proud to say I had a 100% hit rate on all of those recommendations. But so I still do that kind of on the side, more from the development perspective. So I actually have 3 coaching clients right now that I started with just an assessment debrief based off the Hogan, kind of talk about their current job, what their general profile was, what was challenging, what wasn't challenging, some opportunities. And now we're continuing that with some coaching sessions focused on their current job. And they're in a high potential development program. So it's really to help them develop to become better leaders.
100% success rate? I mean, talk about validity.
I know, right? Right. So
it's so reliable.
Now, but this was not a predictive study. So whether or not any of those people are still there and doing well, question. But in terms of the recommendation, 100% accuracy, validity on the recommendations provided.
I mean, prediction's really hard, especially about the future, right?
It is. Yeah. It is. And it's actually funny because we talked about predictive and concurrent validity in my class, and students were just having trouble grasping it. And I'm like, well, the good thing is you never have to worry about predictive validity because nobody ever does it. So it's really more conceptual than real life.
What are the students really interested in? What really resonates with them?
So I would actually say, funny enough, I think the class that was the most fun was when we talked about job analysis.
Really?
Part of that, like, I had to go way back. I went back to ONET. Like, when was the last time you went to ONET? It had probably been 50
like yesterday.
Yeah, right. So I had to go to ONET and start to look up different jobs. I said, everybody choose a job you want to focus on. and go to ONET and find the skills and abilities and competencies and all that good stuff. I said, then go to LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever, find some job openings and see if they kind of align. And people were like, fighter pilot, dentist, football coach, all that stuff. So, like, funny enough, the things that keep them really engaged is when they get to go out and learn about something that's interesting to them, right?
Yeah.
So ONET, it's making a comeback. It's like the next greatest thing.
Well, what does it say for Zookeeper?
Oh, so Zookeeper is what you would expect. Animal care, animal behavior. There's also an element of like teaching and kind of
Yeah.
giving tours, being kind of like spokespersons for the zoos, depending on your zookeeper level. There's like a management aspect, a relationship aspect. And we focused specifically the other day on Moodang's Zookeeper. So you're familiar with Moodang, the viral
No.
Oh my goodness. So Moodang was the viral pygmy hippo that was born in June or July in Thailand and became this internet sensation because she's just this silly little crazy thing. And her zookeeper basically started broadcasting all of this on social media and made the zoo and Moodang so famous that the zoo had to totally revamp the way they thought about, handling all these visitors. So now you have to go stand in line. You get 5 minutes with Moodang. That's it. Then you need to move on. So that's actually been my zookeeper example during this whole class. And it's actually been like a really silly way for the students to actually like engage and think differently. And I gotta say, like, I'm so impressed with how like some of them are thinking in such a sophisticated, mature fashion. And we're talking like juniors and seniors here, about how it all links together. So it's been a ton of fun.
It is fun to see all the dots connect. Cole's a big Harambe guy. He's a big
Deep
talking about
dive.
zookeepers.
Was
Yeah.
Harambe the one that stole the baby and like swung them around?
I don't know if that actually happened, but yeah, somehow a kid fell into the
That's
pit
Yes,
and they had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
You
the one.
better
R.I.P. for sure.
you better
Never forget.
Did you ever hear Dave Chappelle's joke about that?
No, what was that?
So Dave Chappelle, like, he brought it up, and he's the only person that can make this funny. And he's like, "Y'all, I get it. Like, as a parent, you turn away for 1 second, the kid's gone. You don't know. Next thing you know, they're in a gorilla pen, being like thrown around by a gorilla. Much, much funnier than that, obviously. But I'm like, only Dave Chappelle could actually make that a really hilarious joke.
Well, I mean, you could like expand on the zookeeper elements to like other sort of tactics, like critical incidences. So, lion jumps over fence. What do
very
you
critical.
do? What do you do?
So that's actually funny because when the students were doing the job analysis for the Moodang for the zookeeper, they were like, "Well, they have to be able to lift a lot of poop." I was like, "You know what?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
physical ability part that's actually really important." And they're like Moodang can't die. Like they have to know how to do pygmy hippo first aid. I'm like, these are really important skills for that type of role. Absolutely. I also threw a curveball. We talked about cognitive job analysis.
yeah.
So we use Mike Tyson. I was like, what's going through Mike Tyson's head? Maybe not a lot. I don't know. Let's just say hypothetically, right? Or a boxer, like what are the ways that you would actually analyze the mental and cognitive processes that a boxer is thinking about, either preparing for a match, during a match, or doing like the post-match analysis? And that was a really fun one too, because it's getting them to think about these concepts that apply to the world of work in a very different way. And then I bring in the real life example. So I always using these fake tech
Yeah.
company examples, right? So do a fun example. Now let's apply it to a real example and let's see what comes up.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most humbling experiences of my life was I was asked to test out a airplane pilot visual acuity test. So it's essentially you were like the way the test was, like, you're trying to dodge little elements coming at you on the screen, and I would go like 3 to 5 seconds and like get hit. And eventually they came back and said I tried it for like an hour. I couldn't get it. And they're like, "Oh yeah, pilots can go like for minutes and minutes and minutes. It's not you. Like, you're just not a pilot,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're just not in that range."
Yeah. Maybe we might need to give pilots some new tests lately. I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah. I feel like there's been a lot of issues with pilots lately.
We need to bring back Sully. Remember Sully?
Sully, yeah, landing in the Potomac?
The
Yes,
Hudson.
successfully
Hudson.
the plane in the Hudson, and actually, there was a lot of cognitive job analysis done after that to help pilots train for those types of scenarios, so it all comes around.
Yeah, when your plane's upside down on the runway, that's not a good look when you look
Oh,
back
well,
at
I
it.
can't wait because 'cause I'm flying to Toronto on Delta next week, so wish me luck. Although that 30 grand might be nice in the pocket as long as nobody gets hurt.
Yeah, as long as you make it alive.
As long as you make it there in one piece, that's really what matters.
How did they come up with 30 grand? Like, is it
No, I have no idea what.
that
You know
feels
what? I bet they didn't use the people analytics team to figure it out.
But I bet you they did use some really cynical analysis.
They probably did.
Yeah. Well, I think Roxanne, if you're Mike, I had a few thoughts. I was like thinking about like Mike Tyson. I actually think he's like super into like mindfulness now and all that stuff, and so it actually might be an interesting cognitive job analysis.
well, he does have the famous quote, like, "Everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face."
Yes, absolutely. So,
Get it
well,
on a t-shirt.
I wonder, I don't think there was a lot of mindfulness in the preparation for the last fight. I think that was just dollar signs in the back of his head for that one.
The
Finish
way that he pulled the punch on, oh god, that guy, whatever his name is, the
Paul, right?
Paul, yeah, Jake Paul.
Or low, I can't remember which one. Yeah. That was something else, that one. I'm actually a big I've been a boxer and kickboxer since I was a teenager. So that was
Yeah?
extra fascinating fight to watch. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You could give Tyson some pointers. Yeah.
No, I can't, but I did see him in an airport once. I was walking through, I did layover at Salt Lake City, and I'm walking through and I see this like huge crowd of people and I think, what the heck? And I kind of peek over. I see this like pretty short guy. I'm like, who the heck is that guy? He's like, oh my God, that's Mike Tyson. People were just like eating it up. So I did not try to fight my way in there to see him, but I have seen him somewhat up close, short as heck.
Used your Krav Maga to get in
Oh,
there.
God, I don't know. One strike from him and that wouldn't do much good for me. That's
Well, that's the Israeli, defense technique, right?
so Krav Maga is like the official fighting system of the Israeli Defense Forces. And it's actually when I was in grad school in Minneapolis, I spent many years in Minneapolis. That's where I got my PhD. I started to go to this like little kickboxing gym. So that's when I really started kickboxing. And the owner at the time had heard about this kind of newfangled thing called Krav Maga. And have y'all ever seen the movie called Enough with Jennifer Lopez, where she had to like fight off her husband and she learned martial arts? So this
No.
No.
was like early 2000s and it was Krav Maga. So she trained at the school where I did my training, right? And so one of our instructors, I can't remember his name at this point, like was her official trainer. So all these gyms kind of started to like hear more about it and it became more popular and there's like a whole instructor training mechanism and method. And so I went and I got my ass handed to me for a week straight. When I came back, I was literally bruises, like head to toe, but I was like officially a Krav Maga instructor. And so I taught that for a couple of years. And then I just kind of got out of that because I'm like, I don't want to teach that. I just want to kick and punch things.
Well, Jenny from the Block's a bad girl, you know? She
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
mess with her.
I don't know how
Yeah.
good she was at that, but she's definitely one of the more like fit 56. I think she's 56 year olds that you
She
see.
looks good. She's
So, like,
holding
she
up.
works her literally, well, maybe she doesn't work her butt off because I know that's insured, but she does work super, super, super hard, to stay in good shape. Well, she probably has, an amazing team around her, right? So, we probably all would look like that if we had that time and dedication.
FYI, if you're into rodeos and you wanna see some wild, wild rodeo action, what's Cole, what's the prison in South Louisiana? The
Oh,
big one?
Oh, it starts with the A.
Angola. Go to the Angola prison rodeo, and you will see some wild, wild things.
wait, have you been there?
Yeah, yeah. We took a road. We both Cole and I. We didn't go together, but we both
Oh,
went to school in Louisiana, and it was
oh,
like a 3-hour road trip. And you
wow.
go into the prison, and you go past the gates, and it's like 2 to 3 miles before you get to the actual rodeo. Like, if anyone were to get out of their barracks, you're
Yeah.
not you're not getting out of there. Like, it's just so far.
Whoa.
But you go in and, like, the prison or the rodeo is surrounded by barbed wire. They have a section for just prisoners, and they're all caged in there. So they're separate from the, the public.
Oh my god.
But they had, horses dragging prisoners around. They had, hula hoops on the ground. Just let a bull go loose and let them just, like, destroy them. They did, put, like, a prison ducket on the head of a bull and let them just go try and grab it. Put, like, 100 prisoners in the ring and let them try and get this, like,
Oh my goodness.
commissary token. It was wild, 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 wild.
I feel like we're taking Directionally Correct to a new level today with the conversation about prison rodeos.
They
But
had monkeys. It
I
was
don't know if
great.
I'll go, but sounds fascinating for sure. I was just gonna say it's been a long time since I've been to a rodeo, but it's actually only a few years since I've been to a rodeo because my parents still like to go to the local rodeos. And so a few years ago, I went home for Canada Day and
Yeah.
my mom said, well, we got tickets to the rodeo. Do you want to go? I'm like, of course I do. And it's fascinating experience to this day.
Is it wrong that I'm jealous of the mutton busters? I want a mutton bust.
I think might be too big to mutton bust. So I think
Yeah,
you gotta go
I know,
straight
I'm
to bull
jealous.
riding. You gotta skip the muttons and go straight to the bull riding.
Man, that's scary as shit.
Yeah.
That's
I knew you were ready for the podcast, Roxanne.
Yeah. Oh my
This is awesome. Do you want to join us in the confusion matrix?
Yeah, let's do it.
The confusion matrix.
Let's go crazy. Here, we'll do pick a number. Pick a number 1 through 5. The destiny awaits.
And say it out loud.
Yeah. Just
Okay.
pick a number.
3.
3. What do we got for 3? What's the most useless talent that you're proud of?
Useless? I don't know. I could probably break someone's arm.
Well, that's not
Ooh.
useless.
Well,
Jesus
that's why I
Christ.
was saying, I hope I never have to use it, but I'm kind of proud.
Where do you break it? Do you break it at the elbow?
Well, it depends how they're coming at you. But the elbow is a nice one if you can get it backwards, or the wrist. I've never
Interesting.
broken anybody's arm, by the way. So let's just like clarify that. So it's useless because I've never have, and hopefully I never.
Oh, okay. Um, so like, are you like a submission girly? Like,
No, so I don't really. I'm not a big fan of like the grappling um,
yeah,
and that kind of stuff. I'm more of like a blunt force, brute
just
force.
a
Actually, like so that the
heel to the chest, heel
heel
to
to
the
the
sternum.
chest, or like someone throws a punch at you, and that's where you grab the arm and you like crack it over your knee to break it, kind of thing.
Yeah, of course, as
It
one
all
does, right?
makes sense, like, in training, but in reality, it's a lot harder than that to actually break someone's arm.
You would fit right in on East 6th Street. I don't know why are you like so opposed to
Get in
it?
trouble. I don't wanna get in trouble.
Do you have a talent, Scott?
I mean, useless. Like, I think that I can anticipate when people gotta pee. Like in the room, like, okay, they're starting to squirm. They're about to head over the restroom.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. I have a less than useless talent. I've done it a few times where I know all the words to Jay-Z and Linkin Park Numb Encore and have done that at like company Christmas parties and things like that. And that's a fun one. I did it in a tuxedo one time.
Well, you gotta hit us with a few bars, man.
Oh no, not
Come
today.
on.
Not today.
Wow.
Oh,
We gotta let
boo.
Roxanne break somebody's arm too,
Oh my god. I might have to break somebody's arm if you start singing.
So wait, Cole, you've sang at Christmas parties or company parties.
Yeah.
You've done this on stage.
I've done it on stage.
Is there video?
I don't know. Maybe.
That's the goal. Find that video.
That's really bold. Like, I've always wanted to be the karaoke guy, but like, no, it's it. I've never actually done it. Not even like in like the small shitty bars where no one's there.
Do it. You got to do it at least once. It's actually really fun.
Is
Yeah,
it?
karaoke's fun.
It's fun. Yeah. You got to have the right vibe and the right people around you. And then like, I haven't done it for quite some time, but it's actually can be really, really fun.
I heard someone like throw out the theory that people are either lyric people or they're music people. Obviously, they go
Yeah.
hand in hand. But I'm definitely a music person. Like I don't know the lyrics to any of the songs. I like them just fine. But
You're absolutely right, Scott. I'm a lyric person, right?
ah,
And we were talking about this before the pod about
yeah.
the dress and the color, like the white versus gold and the black versus what is it, black and
Do you remember the black and blue versus white and gold dress, Roxanne, from 10 years
Yes.
ago?
It just came up the other day. It was like just the
Yeah.
anniversary of it.
What'd you see?
I saw blue
Yeah, all day.
all
see,
day.
and I saw white and gold.
Hmm.
Are you a more lyric person or more music person?
For me, actually, I think it depends on the song, right? And the kind of music. I think I can appreciate both depending, but I'm not good at knowing all the lyrics. So I was with a friend. We were hanging out. We're in his car. He's like, put on some of your favorite songs. And he's like, I can't believe you don't know the words to them. I was like, I know the keywords.
Yeah, yeah.
I know the beat and I know the keywords. I'm like, that's all I need to know. And he was like shocked that I didn't know all the words. So maybe I'm a music person.
There's nothing more humbling than like thinking that you know the lyrics and you clearly don't. Like throw in like REM's Into the World, and I feel fine. Like holy shit, like
Yeah.
Leonard
That's impressive.
Bernstein.
Yeah.
I remember this is in high school because we talked about this a long time ago about being in a band. So my thing is with lyrics, if you can tell me like the first few words to a song, I can say almost all the words. But
Wow.
oftentimes I'll forget the first few words. And I was like the lead singer and I forgot the words to our own song.
Oh,
And I remember I had to go to my guitarist in the middle of the song and like, tell me the words again.
words.
And then I was like, oh yeah. And then I like picked it up right in the middle, like as we were going. That was stupid.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, like I struggle with this during like presentations too. It's like if I have everything written out, that's no good. But if I just have a bullet point with a couple little elements, I'm good to go. I can riff on that. I kind of know my spiel, but like if you just gave me like a transcript, that would be bad news. That'd be bad news all day.
Yeah. It's got to get you going. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Get a little
Well, you want to do some nerdery?
Let's do some nerdery.
The nerdery. Awesome. Well, why don't we start with some Frank Schmidt disciples? Scott, you want to talk about that?
Let's do it.
Frank Schmidt disciples.
See, Scott doesn't know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So we're privy to a fun little conversation we had with Paul Sackett recently, but Denise is a Frank Schmidt disciple.
Oh, gotcha.
Colleague of Paul Sackett's, and they have a huge disagreement on Paul's latest big paper.
Denise and Paul disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
On what topic? Like the implications that cognitive ability is less valuable.
Oh, it's not even the implications. I think it really gets back to the methodology. Like Paul and team pointed out some flaws in the methodology. And there's a lot of, I think, pushback. They're saying like, well, your methodology also has flaws. So the flaws of the flaws, if you put two flaws together, like where do you end up? Back at the beginning? I don't know. So a lot of debate about the very technical aspects of both papers.
As my mom always said, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
No, I don't.
But 3 rights make a left.
It's a really interesting question because like there's no perfect research out there, right? And like I guess this paper kind of gets to that as well. Like we are aggregating studies in this large meta-analysis. Here, I'll get into it. This is probably the largest meta-analysis of the agreeableness personality factor that we've seen to date. I think they took 130 different meta-analyses covering 275 variables, and they found that agreeableness predicted positively or in the positive direction for 93% of them. And they factored in this into like 8 different themes, including contentment, teamwork, and something else that I can't read my own handwriting right now. But I think that overall, like we are essentially told that agreeableness is kind of bad. Like you're not celebrated for being agreeable. It's kind of an interesting study. Like it goes off into like life success.
Yeah, we were told this a few episodes ago. I think that's why that came up.
Who told you
Right?
that? Who said that? Paul?
Mark Efron came
Oh,
on and he
Mark.
was like,
Oh, I love Mark.
he's like, yeah, being agreeable, you're gonna not be successful or something like that. And I know Scott was like, what?
Hold on, though. I think we're making a fundamental error here in thinking that agreeableness means one simple thing, right? And so there's multiple facets to what that means. And I think, Scott, like that paper gets at some of the facets. But I think the answer, as with always, is like, it kind of depends. You know what? There's some jobs where it's actually a really
Yeah.
important thing to be agreeable. There's some jobs where it's not. But when you take away the context of the job, in general, being a generally agreeable type of person is not going to get in the way of you being a successful person in your life.
I mean, this is kind of where the different personality factors start to intermingle as well. I think that people that are disagreeable also have low openness, right? And I mean, that relates to cognitive ability as well. So have you ever encountered someone that just like, no matter what you fucking say, they're like, no, no, not gonna do it. No,
Yeah,
no. It's
absolutely.
it's hard to deal with these people. And of course you're gonna have like worst life outcomes. Just from a
The people that say no before you even get the question out,
yeah.
it's like, how you don't even know what I'm going to say. Okay, is that agreeable? But we can't just relegate that to agreeableness only. So, like, I'm a big proponent. Is like,
I
and part of the
disagree.
thing with this study is that you're only looking at one thing. What's really important, and this is where I always get on my Hogan sandbox. It's the interaction,
Yeah, absolutely.
interrelationship between multiple things that actually matters. So that person, it like there's an agreeableness factor, but there's probably like 15 other factors that are really important, right? Around why they're showing up that way.
So is there such thing as a psychometrically bad personality?
No, because well,
A high agreeable, low openness. Like what does that even look like?
it depends. And so I'm gonna talk about in kind of Hogan frames. The thing is, like, a lot of this is really dependent on context, right? So when you think about like personality assessment for work, different jobs have different things that are more likely to lead to success, right? There's some things
Right.
like I don't know, what's it like if you're an accountant and you have poor attention to detail, maybe you wouldn't want to be the person I would sign up to be my accountant, as an example, right? But if you're really high attention to detail, that's important. But whether or not you're agreeable or open kind of depends on what we're talking about here, right? So I think it depends. And I think psychometrically bad personality, only if we're talking about like MMPI,
Mhm.
psychological disorders. I think, and whether or not that's good or bad, again, is like that kind of dichotomy is really hard. But there are some personality styles or patterns or themes that I think are more indicative of whether or not you will be successful in different areas. But there's also like 5 bazillion combinations of Hogan scales that can lead to success in any one role.
I had to read this like a grad student. I didn't have access to the article, so I was limited to just the abstract. So we're trying to abstract from an abstract, as it were. Uh, but it just makes theoretical sense that like if you're just sort of like go with the flow,
Mhm.
that's going to be just an easier life path for you.
Mhm.
If you're constantly disagreeing and unwilling to go along with, say, the team, the people around you, the ideas, that's just a harder life. But like to your point, I do love it when you get someone on a no roll, and you're like, "Hey, can we try no? Can we try no? Can't no? Like, hey, can I give you $1,000,000? No."
And you're like,
Like,
okay.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
What do you think though is going on in that person's life outside of that situation that's maybe contributing to that?
I think that they see white and gold dresses when it's really black and blue. I think that's what's
What?
That
going
actually
on.
might be the most important predictor of
I
all time.
think so.
What color
Well,
do you
it is. We were talking about this before the pod started. Like, it's really wild that people can look at the same image and come up with totally different
Mhm.
impressions of what's going on. And like, of course, that funnels down to, how you perceive the world. But I mean, same stimulus, something happens in the brain that changes that for people. And of course, you're not going to come to the same answer. Of course, you're not going to have the same sort of personality. Have y'all ever like taken a Rorschach like training seminar or anything like that?
No, but I did have my handwriting read once.
Oh, graphology.
So it was actually while I was at Hogan, and there was a self-made billionaire real estate mogul in New York City who was friends with Adam Grant and was interested in personality assessment for his firm. So Adam said, call Hogan. So we called Hogan, and the CEO at the time was like, this guy's wild. So he calls me. He's like, Rox, you're the only person that can handle this guy. And I'm like, let's do it. So I had this conversation with this guy, and like brilliant, but like everywhere, like, oh, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. And I was like, oh my God. Then he's like, send me a handwriting sample. And I'm like, okay. So I did, and literally, I mean, this billionaire calls me on my cell phone 5 minutes after I email it to him, and he's like, "I've got it all figured out." And like some of the stuff was fair, but like I was, very meticulous in the lines, and he's like, "You're very detail oriented, and like you don't like it when things don't go your way." I'm like, I could have assumed that from the way I wrote it too. But then he's like, "But you have a terrible relationship with your mom," and I was like, "Well, that's actually not true." He's like, and then he was shocked. He's like, "What? That's not true." I'm like, "No, I don't have a terrible relationship with my mom." And he's like, "I can't believe this isn't accurate." I'm like, "Well, it's fucking graphology, dude. Like, of course it's not accurate."
The validity is in question here.
Yeah.
The humps on your ends suggest that you're an outgoing person.
Yeah. I landed the client though, and I did Hogan assessments for their company the entire time I was at Hogan.
I think that you can like divine like conscientiousness from like certain things. Like if you like your students, you probably give them like a bubble sheet to answer. Like the ones that fill it in just very
Yeah.
meticulously. I think
There's
that flows into other areas of life.
It's true. I made the mistake of the first quiz of having an open-ended handwritten answer.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And there's some people like so meticulous, amazing. This couple, I was like, how do you get to this point in your life with this like squiggly lines? I'm like, I don't even know what these letters mean.
Are has anything changed in the pandemic? Like kids' writing styles, anything like that?
I don't know. I keep,
Ability to write, rather.
I don't really know. I haven't done like a pre-post analysis, but I bet it's like when I handed out the quiz and one student takes it, he looks at me, he's like, paper? And I was like, yeah, I'm paper.
What is
And he's
this?
like, what? I'm not. And then like came up to me afterwards. He's like, that really freaked me out. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, Ethan Burris, the dean of this business school, told me to actually give you a paper pencil quiz. But the poor kid, like it totally threw him off. So I'm like, I guess it's not as common necessarily. And so I think
Yeah.
it's like a different way of thinking. Like when you're typing something, right, or doing it online, it's a different way of thinking when you have to write it out. It takes more time. So it's actually an interesting study to be had. I wonder if anybody's looked at the implications of writing versus typing on test score results.
You sent him to the co-op to get a blue book?
No, we didn't. No, I didn't. No, there's none of that. So I got to figure that out for the midterm and final. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've hit on a few random psychometric ways of assessing people.
Mhm.
Do you want to do another one based on smell?
Yeah.
Okay. I found this wildly interesting. This PhD student, now doctor, what's her name? Allie Looks. I can't really read my handwriting, but she posted her thesis online, and it was around the politics of smell. Not my bag, whatever. But the internet's a dangerous place. She got all sorts of blowback from it, but I think it's interesting her perspective of we do all this great research in universities. I think she's at Cambridge or something like that, but we don't really get our research out to the masses. People don't really understand, Paul Sackett's new
Mhm.
study and like what the implications of those. So I thought it was like a really sort of interesting world where she's sharing her research out into the masses and people don't really understand it.
And so I watched that little clip, and I was
Yeah.
like, I can see how by watching it, like a 2-minute clip or whatever, people might freak out about some of the examples she gave in there. But there's also oh my God, some old school study about like the percentage of articles that are actually read that are published in scientific journal. And it's like less than 5%.
Oh my
right? So
god.
it's a great example where people spend all this time. How many people are going to read that meta-analysis? Only people who are like very involved in a very small proportion of scientific psychological research. Like that's not going to get out into the public in the open. And frankly, it doesn't, I think, have a lot of like value necessarily, my personal opinion. But yeah, it's a whole thing. Nobody reads any of this stuff except when they find out about smells.
Yeah. You better have a catchy title.
I don't think people really understand like the academic life either. It's like you're just trying to make a small advancement, and like you're just trying to get done with your thesis, your dissertation, whatever too. And like yeah, it becomes overly esoteric, and like where we're using language that only other PhDs in my field can understand for a reason,
Mhm.
and the public of course sees this and like what the hell are you doing?
In my early days in grad school, had to take a social psychology class, and the professors did a lot of like health and wellness research. And they're
Mm-hmm.
going off and on and on. And the guy was maybe like low agreeableness, ironically. But I put up my little hand and I was like, yeah, but like, do you ever actually do anything to help people? And like throws his book in the air. Like, Roxanne, I'm a psychologist. Like, I don't do that stuff. And I was like, whoa, sorry for asking if your research actually helps people lead better lives. And he was like super offended that I even asked. I'm like, okay, never again.
I'm a people person, damn it.
Yeah.
Like the,
See?
like the guy from Office Space.
I
Oh,
went into academia, so I never had to touch reality. Great. Well, speaking of never touching reality, Anthropic recently published their economic index. So essentially, Anthropic, the developers of Claude, the AI tool, they wanted to know how much AI was having an impact on different professions. And I thought this was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did is they went through a bunch of different professions, but they found that today usage is concentrated mostly in software development and technical writing tasks,
mhm.
with over a third of occupations, roughly 36%, see AI use in at least a quarter of their associated tasks. AI currently leans more towards augmentation than automation. So 57% used it for augmenting what they were doing versus 43% of tasks for automation. And its most prevalent uses were for mid to high wage occupations
Hmm.
like computer programmers and data scientists, but is lower for both the lowest and highest paid roles. And so if you look at it, it shows like computer and mathematical occupations, 37% are using AI, arts and media, 10%. And it goes down pretty precipitously from there, with business and financial only 5.9%. But I think this was fascinating. Did you guys get a chance to look through this?
I forgot to. I did not. But it is fascinating and very germane because, AI is almost much to do about nothing for most people in a lot of ways. Like it does augment and make
Exactly.
tasks
That's
easier.
wild.
It is not necessarily, I think, transforming the workplace like some people thought it would maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
I
The zookeeper's not using it yet with the Mudang or whatever the panda's name is, or sorry, hippo.
Me hippo.
I used ChatGPT to summarize the article. That's how I read it. I do worry about yeah, yes. There's several points to bring up. Like one is say in these high skill jobs, if you use Gen AI, you're gonna have a performance compression point to where like why would you pay someone a high salary if someone junior can make that up? So I mean that's sort of a tangent. But what I've been sort of once again back to the humanistic element of
Mhm.
psychology. If you have Gen AI write you a book, like Cole's just or
Mhm.
he's about to publish a book. Congratulations! If he
Thank you.
had a Gen AI write all that stuff for him, what sort of sense of accomplishment would he achieve there? Us as knowledge workers already struggle with like at the end of the day, like you send an email, you maybe wrote a paragraph in a document, you made a slide deck, whatever. That's not the same as being like a woodworker who at the end of the day, like I've been sweating, like I've farmed this land, I something like really tangible that you can speak to. But I really worry about the human element of you didn't create that work with Gen AI, and what does it mean to you? What sort of meaning are you deriving from work that you didn't really do?
Well, and you probably have less emotional investment in
Yeah.
the success of it, right?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting point.
You're willing to toss it away more, whereas like if you created a piece of art, or you tilled the land, you're going to value it much more highly.
That's a wild point because you can go to ChatGPT and say, oh, DALL-E, and say like, here, make me a portrait that's, I don't know, I'm looking at the one behind you, Roxanne, so I'm kind of distracted. Yeah, make me that portrait. You'd be like, all right, that's cool. Close the laptop. But if like you painted that yourself, or drew it out, thought about it, it would obviously create much more value to you.
Does this kind of get back to this old school notion of like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation? Do you remember there's always
Yeah.
kind of this
Yep.
stuff about basketball players where, up and coming pre NBA players doing it for the intrinsic, love the game, get to the NBA, make $1 billion, and then they're just doing it for the salary and they don't care about the game anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So
That's I think that's Aaron Rodgers. Like, I think he's just really good at football, but doesn't really enjoy it.
is he still, isn't he cut now? Is he still
I
playing? Is he done?
He's gonna have a hard time finding
Oh,
another team, I
I think
imagine.
he retired whether he wanted to or not.
yeah. He was retired.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder what his Wonderlic was. Yeah.
Oh man. Somebody that works at Wonderlic. How do we get in there and get that? Well, ironically, and like I'm not getting paid by Hogan, but at Hogan, so we had some NFL clients. And when I was there was a certain company that was putting all of the assistant coaches through the Hogan to recommend them for different
Yeah.
jobs. I don't know if
Yeah.
that still happens, but that is one use case.
Well, we even had Harold Goldstein and Charles Sherbaum on the podcast because they're doing what came after the Wonderlic for the NFL now.
Okay.
And I remember it's some kind of combination or battery of assessments. I can't remember exactly which ones, but it's fascinating stuff.
Very
They
cool.
said that I think they said the offensive linemen were the highest. They score the highest on the
Huh,
assessment.
Mhm.
interesting.
It was either quarterback or offensive lineman. Yeah, specifically the center.
How do you think NFL players, or sorry, NHL players would score on those things?
Oh God, I told you not to bring this up, but as a Canadian, you had to bring it up.
Didn't you notice my t-shirt?
I didn't actually. No.
Oh, Oilers! Look at that. What's his name? McMenamin. He's awesome.
Connor. Well, we're calling him in Canada Connor McJesus, but it's Connor McDavid.
Oh man, there's so many tangents we can go on there.
Let's go back to Cole. What's the next subject?
I think I actually watched the USA versus Canada game.
Yeah.
That's the first hockey game I've ever watched end to end.
No
And I
way.
think I'm USA's bad luck charm, so I'm not allowed to watch the games anymore.
We're allowed to watch
So,
another hockey game against.
yeah,
Yeah, it
I
was something
still
else.
don't really know the rules, but I tried my best.
Do you watch soccer?
Sometimes.
It's similar game. I'm gonna tell you, like very similar game in terms of intent, purpose, offside. So that's how I would kind of think about it.
But
Puck and
for
net.
the listeners, Roxanne wanted to come on and rub our noses in the fact that Canada beat the US in the tournament.
Well, so you beat me. I didn't even stay up for the whole game. I fell asleep, and I was like, I can't have a coronary watching this game. So I went to sleep, but I woke up to lots of messages from my Canadians back home.
Did you say we got this in the bag, eh?
No, no, I did not. And no, we
Okay,
do
I
not
think you
use the word
did. While you were eating your poutine, I know you did.
we do not use the word hoser either. Tim Hortons, I can get behind. Absolutely. We have one here in Austin, I think. They just opened a Tim Hortons, I feel,
Really?
somewhere. I
Weird.
think I read that. Yeah.
Man,
Tim Hortons.
See, they are keeping Austin weird.
We are, yeah. Tim Hortons of all things.
I think we've run our course today, but it has been fantastic having you on as a guest, Roxanne. Any parting words for Roxanne before we let her give her the final word, Scott?
I think that was for me. What a time to be alive. Tim Hortons in Austin. My God. Roxanne, it's an absolute pleasure. I do believe that you're a West Six girly after hearing you talk.
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
No.
Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott, and today's guest, Roxanne Laczo. Good to see you, Roxanne.
Thank you guys so much. This was so fun.